Okay, yeah, sorry I was gone for a bit there, but I'm ready to go for episode 126.
It's 127.
No, I checked. It's the last episode. It's 126.
Now, Brian, I did a show yesterday. I did an interview show yesterday with BNEF.
That's not possible. You can't do a show without me.
Well, it went really well.
What? It's in my contract. You can't do a show without me.
Well, you were there in spirit.
What? You son of a... Hello and welcome to episode 127 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, I apologize to Joe Manchin. He's clearly a saint after approving the largest climate action in U.S. history, the Inflation Reduction Act.
A massive fire has been spreading at an oil storage facility in Cuba. Our only hope now is that the fire spreads to a Cuban cigar factory so we can all enjoy the sweet, smooth, smoky aroma.
And I outline everything clean energy related from my vacation. And as Brian predicted in the last episode, I did in fact almost die.
Chinese EV maker BYD is entering the Japanese market with 3 models. Japanese car makers have stated publicly that they're not worried. Privately, they stated, "Oh yeah, we're totally doomed."
All that and more on this post-vacation edition of The Clean Energy Show. Brian, when I got back from your cottage, I wanted to record a podcast. I was not ready to put my feet up anymore. I can't stand it. I don't know what I'm going to do. If you die, if you get run over by a bus, I'm just not going to be able to expound my clean energy thoughts, and I'm desperate. I'm hooked on this now.
Yeah, well, maybe you could improv it with, you could, pretend that I'm, do 2 voices, like
just do a dumb voice for you, like a puppet voice.
Duh, I'm James. I do a podcast.
Something like that. It seems to work well. Yeah, so we got a fat, over-bloated show for you this week to get everything out of our system. So listen to it at 2 times speed if you have to. Yeah,
and of course, like we had pre-recorded our last full episode because you were taking a week off, and with the hope that nothing major happened. And it did kind of wait until you were back, but lots of major things happened, and so much so that you recorded an episode without me, and then here we are to do another one.
Yes, so the episode without you is episode 126. It is the interview with 2 analysts from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Terrific conversation with those people. I hope you listen to it. It's not just about the United States, as we learned throughout the podcast. It is for the world that this is very important, and not just for the reduction of emissions, but because it influences the rest of the world. The United States taking action is a linchpin for everyone else to do action on climate change.
Yeah, no, I did hear the show. It was awesome. And yes, I think it's true. Lots of symbolic value as well as dollar value.
You have a little bit different sound this week.
Yeah, look at this. I got, James, a new microphone. Can you believe it?
I'm stunned, Brian. I'm stunned.
We now have matching microphones. Did you ever see that documentary Metallica, Some Kind of Monster?
I watched some of it, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. This is the microphone they use in the studio.
That's the microphone.
In that film. So, it's got to be good.
I saw it on I don't know, as my daughter was watching a Taylor Swift documentary. You see it all over the place. It's a very common microphone. What is it? The Shure SM
7B. And it's, a bit of a cliche as a podcast microphone, but that's probably because it's the best.
I've been watching Only Murders in the Building. Have you? You haven't been watching that, have you?
No, I have. Disney? I love it. Really love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I can't, and it's different podcasts people talk about it because there's the storyline is that they're podcasting a true crime podcast as it happens in their building.
Yeah.
But only in their building.
Yeah. Steve Martin Short, and there's a murder in their building and they make a podcast about it while they're doing it. So I'm always kind of looking for the podcast elements, which are semi-realistic, like they're always kind of pulling out a phone and recording something. They're sort of doing it just enough to make it believable, I think.
It was kind of funny, though, if you watch the initial episode of the series, they start with really bad mics and they constantly go up. And Martin Short's character is the one doing the buying because he's the enthusiastic one, but he doesn't have any money because he's an out of work Broadway director, and he owes money on his building fees. So he says he's going to take them back after 30 days, but he keeps getting better equipment, and they've got boom mics at the end for, and different things, and they record it in the closet. Yeah, it's my 14-year-old daughter's watching it with us, and she's just loving it now too. And terrific shows.
If we're lucky, there'll be some kind of murder nearby, and we can include that on this show.
Yes. It'll be our spinoff. Only murders on the podcast. And did you get your bike yet? Your second bike?
Yes. So I did want to update you on that. We got the second one. So my partner and I have matching bikes. This is the Ride One Up Roadster V2 Gravel Edition electric bike, and we ordered them online from the company Ride One Up. So yeah, we got the second one. We've been going out on bike rides. Absolutely love it. This bike is so great. I have nothing but good things to say about it. It's just super fun to ride. It's the right kind of size and shape for a bike for me. Like, this is the kind of bike that I like. It's very light in terms of an electric bike. I think it's 33 pounds.
Wow. That's about as light as they come.
I think so. For electric bikes, the battery's integrated into the frame, so it's not the biggest battery, but we don't go on particularly long trips. So like 20 miles, 30 kilometers is kind of the max, but we've come nowhere near to hitting that. I got it up to 22 miles an hour. The speedometer's in miles. And so that's about 35 kilometers an hour, which is about as fast as you can do because it is only one gear. It's got a belt drive with only one gear. And the gearing is not really tall enough to go any faster than that. But, who needs to go faster than 22 miles an hour? That's plenty fast, tons of fun. And my only other sort of maybe quibble about it is that there's not much of a battery management system. So they recommend in the literature not to leave it plugged in. Like, it's the kind of thing where...
Yeah, mine did the same.
When you plug it in to charge it, they recommend set a timer on your phone to unplug it after an hour or whatever you need, because it's not... it's not good for the battery if you just leave it plugged in. So I've been doing that and also trying to keep it. They recommend keeping the battery between 30% and 80%. That's hard to do because there's no precise kind of measurements, but basically go for a bike ride, leave it plugged in for 20 minutes or something like that, and then make sure to unplug it. But yeah, absolutely love it. Nothing but good things to say.
Mine says that you may need to run it down all the way, then charge it full in order for the computer battery, the onboard computer, to understand the range and charge. Not the range, but the charge percentage.
Mine didn't say that, but even with a laptop, it's sort of recommended that you do that every once in a while just to kind of recalibrate the battery. Get it down to zero.
Having said that, my portable drill and portable weed whacker has battery management in the charger and knows when to stop. So I'm a little disappointed that electric bikes don't. They're smaller batteries, mind you.
I'm not sure why. And also, this is definitely on the low end of price, but again, that's one of the reasons I love the bike. Like, it's $1,250 US. Getting it here to Canada was maybe $1,800 for each bike, which is, definitely on the low end. So, you don't expect maybe all the bells and whistles, but this is the gravel edition. So it's a slight upgrade from the regular Roadster, which is, that one's like $1,050. So you can even get a slightly cheaper one. This one has, upgraded tires and I think maybe a slightly upgraded belt drive or something like that. But yeah, it's great.
Did you go for a romantic bike ride with
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And this is the kind of electric part of it is we went out on our bike path here in town. We have a nice bike path that goes through the city and long ways. And we started coming back and we realized, okay, well, we'd like to get home now. So maybe we'll go off the bike path and drive through the city streets, because that's the shortest route to get home. And then we realized, oh, no, wait, we'll just put the speed onto number 5, take the long route, stay on the bike path. It's twice as long, but there's 5 power levels. And so if you want to go quickly or you're feeling lazy, just put it up to number 5. So we were able to take the scenic ride home and arrive in kind of the same amount of time. So yeah, love it. And so, but power level 1, 2, and 3 is kind of the general range where I put it. It's a bit like shifting gears. Level 1 is fine for, flat terrain and no headwind or anything. And in a bit more of a workout. But, if you've got a headwind or you're heading up a hill or something, you can just pop it up to level 2 or 3.
What happens to your other bike, your folding bike, your first bike, e-bike you bought?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep that one as a sort of a specialty bike because you can fold it and put it easily in the trunk of the car. So I think we discussed, I'm actually going up to Saskatoon on Friday because I have a Tesla service appointment. I've got a squeaky steering wheel and a bit of squeaky suspension, and they're going to take care of that there. So I'm going to throw the folding e-bike into the trunk and be able to sort of ride around Saskatoon when the car's dropped off.
Okay, well, that's good. Are you going to take the bikes to the lake at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the end of the season, and we're not sure when we're going to get out there again. But that's the hope. We originally kind of bought them for the lake.
Are you going to disassemble them and put them in the back of your 3 or what?
We could definitely fit one in the back of the 3. I don't know. We sometimes take 2 cars out to the lake, so that might be the case. Because I don't have a bike carrier, and I don't really like bike carriers. I don't want to go through that hassle.
You got burned by a bike carrier once.
Yeah. But it's definitely going to be my main bike because I really like it.
All right, enough of this, Brian. Let's get to my vacation. I didn't have much of a vacation. It was a short vacation. Yeah. I went to your cottage, which you were very generous to lend us. And by the way, I asked you if there was anything, if you're going to keep anything from your cottage for sentimental reasons for the new cottage that you're going to build around. No. You didn't want to. And I told my son this and he was offended. He says, oh my God, I have more emotional attachment to that place than Brian does. Like my kids really have, to my shock and surprise, an emotional attachment to your cottage.
Wow.
It's hard for them to leave. Even when they want to, they start taking pictures and looking around like it's the last time they'll ever see it. And
in this case, it might be true.
It might be. And, just capturing the thing. And we took 2 cars out. My kids went together in the Prius, and we, of course, my partner packed the kitchen sink and a few other things. Honestly, you would have been shocked. And I threatened to show that I was going to show you what all this thing, because it's a cottage. Yeah. It's not camping in the woods. You have most of what you need. Why do you have to? We literally packed an SUV and a car full of to the brim. Yeah. And then still I had to come back and get something because I forgot it, and she did. And it's just we were late. So they got there a half hour early, and they found, we were able to get in and sort of put their feet up on the deck and really just had it as their own. And you could tell that they were really enjoying, the adult experience of having their own place in nature for even if it was just a half an hour. So they had a good time, and they, and my son went on as he does, he took my e-bike, my 55-pound mountain bike. It was 55 pounds when I got it, but I actually changed a few things. Like the forks were really heavy. So I saved a few pounds actually by changing the forks to better ones. He likes to go off because there's so many paths out there, and he just loves exploring. This is something that goes back to his early childhood. He still likes doing it. And he came back, and usually when he comes back from these things, he's really happy. It's like the happiest I ever see him is when he comes back from a trip out there. And this time he was a bit off. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he says, there was cows. And I said, well, why? He said, I ran into a herd of cows and they were mean to me. Oh, and no. They mooed at him and offended him somehow. And so he says, I don't feel bad about eating meat anymore. He's come to the conclusion that he doesn't like cows because they were mean to him. Yeah,
well, I think that area around the park is public grazing land that you can, if you're a cattle rancher, there's public grazing land that you can use.
He continued on after the cows because the herd eventually fled. But what if there was an angry bull in that? Like that might be as dangerous as like running into a bear or something. Like,
I suppose,
You don't really expect to run into. It's a provincial park, by the way.
Yeah.
He went off. He wanted to go to the edge of the park, the end of the park, and he did. And about a kilometer before the end of the park, he ran into oil rigs in the park. He took pictures. So there are oil rigs in Kenosee Provincial Park in Saskatchewan, Canada. So did not know then.
I guess I didn't know that either. They'd be sort of toward the edge there. Yeah, but that's wild.
Yeah, so he ran into things he didn't expect. But no, he did have a good time, and he probably would have done more, but it really rained that night and then never stopped. It's just kept raining, and the roads get to be impassable out there after a while
Yep.
because they're made of dirt. So my partner went kayaking, and when she comes back from kayaking, it is the happiest I ever see her when she goes out to the lake, right?
Yeah.
This time, not happy. Was it cows? No. She didn't really tell me, because I went into the side of Little Kenosi Lake and to the shore, and there's these little picnic areas there, and I chose one of them that had a view of the lake, and I could see her coming because I was worried she actually was gone a long time, and I thought, oh great, she's having a good time, or she's dead, either way. And she comes back and she doesn't tell me, so I get to the shore, to the docking station. By the way, they got this great thing for loading kayaks now, this wooden thing at Little Kenosi. It's got little rollers on it.
Nice.
It makes it so easy for novices like us who do it once a year, because you could just sit in your kayak and just give it a little touch and it'll just go right into the water. And if you hit it right, you can come on shore.
You just need somebody to smash that bottle of champagne on it, and that's enough to have it slide into the ocean.
Anyway, what was wrong was just where I was looking at her at these little picnic areas. The next picnic area over, there was a nude photography shoot.
Okay. Okay.
You did not see that coming, did you?
No. Is that kind of thing allowed? Was this sanctioned?
I don't know. I posted on Facebook and I prevented you from seeing it because I wanted to have a natural reaction on the show. So yeah, I spent time waiting around there for a long time, so I knew who was there and who wasn't. And I did not see this with my own eyes, but I saw the people, a woman photographer and a woman model of some sort going there. And the woman was half naked and holding a beer can. She was posing with a beer can. So keep it classy, Saskatchewan. That's yeah. So I had follow-up DMs questions on that from my male friends. Yeah, she got more nature than she bargained for. It was just a little awkward. So you may see some OnlyFans erotica with my partner in the background looking confused in a kayak. Yeah, I told my son this. He says, Dad, you don't understand. This is what people do nowadays. It's Instagram accounts and
yeah.
But they seem to know what they were doing, and they seem to, but from the dialogue that she repeated to me, they seem to be a professional outfit. But there was this sleazy guy hanging out by the dock in the truck that said Monster on the side. So I don't know if he was, because he was flirting with them earlier. I don't know if he was sticking around to get a view, but and me without my binoculars on that day. So, and what else? What else did I do? The morning after my kid's bike trip, it was raining, so wasn't much we could do. It was kind of cool, which was nice because it was hot the first day, by the way. I preferred the cool. And we didn't have a breeze. I hate it when there's no breeze. It's always windy. It's always hurricane force wind where we live. And then when you need a breeze, it's never there for you.
Yeah.
So there was nothing there. It was a little warm. It wasn't as bad as last year, but it was just one day. So we took off. We did a little drive through Redver, Saskatchewan, which is home to the Nazi Party of Canada, or at least the nationalist something party. And he was always talking about it. He had a teacher who came from that town. So we went through there, and then we kept on going into Manitoba. We saw this incredible infrastructure of oil just across the border in Manitoba. You don't think of oil in Manitoba, but we saw literally hundreds of pump jacks in a very condensed space, the most condensed I've ever seen. So I'm thinking it's fracking, because there's like 4 of them in a row and they're going off in different directions. And there was practically a refinery there. Like, it wasn't a refinery, but it was like the size, it looked like a refinery because it all had all these huge storage tanks. And there was no cell service. There was no town. There was nothing there. So it was a kind of a weird little drive we had into Manitoba.
Sounds like a Twilight Zone episode that something weird was going to happen.
Well, believe me, these things crossed my mind. So, yeah. And then later on, we did a day trip into Manitoba. Decided to have some adventure because it was only 4 hours to Winnipeg. So we took off to Winnipeg for a day.
Nice.
And we stayed in a nice little hotel there in a bad part of town. But it was a nice little trip. We did a few things, should have done more perhaps. The drivers are terrible in Manitoba. If you're listening in Winnipeg, you have terrible drivers. The speed limit there is a bit faster than most places. We were down by the forks where the rivers meet, and we saw a bike accident right in front of us. This woman was driving riding a bike and just went right into the ground for no reason. She just said she didn't turn sharp enough and just completely fell over and wrecked all of her clothing. And her Jen, who had just taken a first aid course, ran up to her and she said her face was bleeding and all kinds of things. And the woman was just known to get away. I'm fine. It's just, the people get embarrassed by these things. And,
totally.
God knows I've been there.
Yeah.
But she was, it wasn't good for her. And I have no idea why it happened.
Right. So it wasn't a collision I was expecting with the terrible Winnipeg drivers to be a collision.
Thank
but
goodness.
There was a story going around online a couple of weeks ago that police in Toronto were actually giving out speeding tickets to cyclists. Did you hear that story?
No.
Yeah.
I didn't.
There's a speed limit for cyclists in this, I believe it was Toronto's High Park, and they were literally out there with a radar gun giving out tickets to cyclists for going too fast. And I mean, sure, there's probably better things for the police to be doing with their time, but I do know it is, oftentimes on those shared paths, the cyclists often do go too fast. So, who knows?
It was on a shared path?
I believe so, yeah.
Like a cycling, like a biking trail. It could have been you.
It could have been me, yeah. No, my new bike can go, faster than our school zone speed limits.
Right. And that's what my daughter, who took the bike out just before the vacation, was so thrilled when she came back. And she said, Dad, I broke the law. Because they're only 30 kilometers an hour, right? What is that in miles? It's
like 22 or 20.
Something like that. So it's not very much. Also, I had a whistle dog because A&W brought back the whistle dog. It was a perfect vacation hot dog. It was wonderful. They're doing it better than they used to.
For the hot dog aficionado,
it's more like for my childhood memories, Brian, because I used to have the whistle dog platter come with a little coleslaw and a plastic tray. Those were the days. Simpler times. So my hotel room had power lines right outside the window. So we were on the second floor, and you could touch, if the window had opened, you could touch them.
Okay.
And there was two of them right there, less than a foot away from the window. That's where they decided to put them.
Yeah.
And if you were going to rescue me in the fire, it couldn't be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I questioned that. And I thought I'd mention that because I've never seen anything like that before. And
Sounds
then
like a nice hotel.
I popped into a Chevy dealership, the biggest in Manitoba, in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is a city of almost 1 million people, 900,000 or something like that. And I thought, I keep seeing on Auto Trader that they're getting Chevy bolts in. So, but apparently, I don't know. I went there and it didn't go well. I went to the front desk and I said, cockily, is there anyone that knows anything about EVs that I could talk to?
Yeah.
And she just went on the intercom and said, sales to the front. The first Yahoo came up, young guy said, I said, do you know anything about EVs? And he says, I know a few things. I thought, oh, good. But when we drove in, there was a Bolt EUV. This is the little bigger version for about $1,800 more, right where you drove in. And so I said, great, we can sit in the seats. We can try out the seat. This is really what we wanted to do in case we want to order one. And we did. And they were good. They were firm, but the foam was firm, but you weren't sitting against hard plastic, but it was fairly firm. I mean, probably not that different. Actually, I think it did have fake leather. So it's kind of, leather seats sort of get packed in a bit tighter. So it was fine. I don't think there's going to be they're not as nice as my Leaf. They're not as nice as the Prius, but they're okay. They'll do fine. But the guy, he was like, I know everything. And he said, no, we've hardly sold any, maybe 3 of these. I've seen 3 come through your thing in the past month.
Yeah.
Let alone the past, 5 years that they've been selling them, maybe 4 in that particular place. So he's full of crap and discouraging me from EVs. He didn't try to sell me something else. He did say at one point, they're great. They get a low center of gravity. Lots of people are ordering the Blazer, which is the SUV that's coming next year or so.
Yeah.
So I think he's starting to come around, and that sounds like what a lot of the GM employees are starting to do. But we got into an argument because he said, I asked him, about the charging, because it's supposed to come with a dual voltage charger, so you can plug into a normal 110 volt outlet here in North America, or you can plug into a dryer plug. Maybe you have one in your garage. Maybe you can have one installed for it. You don't have to pay anything. You just have to pay for the electrical work. And actually, GM is paying for that electrical work to around $1,000 US, I think. He claimed it didn't come with one. So I was digging through the trunk and I found the charger, and then I found a detached dryer volt ponytail plug on it. And I said, well, look, here it is. He said, wow, they must have paid the extra $800 for that option. And I said, no, it comes with it. He said, well, you learn something every day, I guess. So he did say it would be $600 to ship it 550 kilometers over here. He said it's no problem to buy out of province. They would write as a check for the extra sales tax, because I have to pay sales tax here.
Yep.
And people are sort of craving all-wheel drive, which is coming in the Blazer. But yeah, he was just, and he didn't want to sell me. I was thinking, okay, he's going to take my number. Didn't do it. I offered it. He didn't take it. Said, I'm not going to be honest with you. We're not going to get any. Well, he says 3 years. He told me 3 years, which is bull crap. It's a lie. You know how the local people aren't doing that. And he said, well, the local people must be getting more, but we're in a small city compared to them. It's just crap.
I mean, I'm sure there is a somewhat limited supply, and they maybe
Brian,
that's
they're
the only
advertising them. I can't watch a baseball game without seeing 5 ads for them. Yeah. How could they advertise something that's not available? Unless they're only going to be seeing, the bigger markets like they would in the States that have, the Ontario is where I watch my Blue Jays games, and they seem to advertise for Ontario, and Ontario doesn't have any incentives.
Well, they would certainly have more gasoline cars on the lot, so that's probably what they try and sell you.
All right. Well, let's get on with some things here, Brian. I can't take up the whole show with my own life. You know that. Toyota, the wheels are falling off from electric. You said on a previous episode that it was just the lug nut issue. Well, it's actually more than that. They're literally falling off, and they can't fix them. They're telling people not to drive them. So thank you, Toyota, for this great endeavor into electric vehicles. For the first time in Toyota history, they've made something that they can't literally keep the wheels on and people can't drive them. This is worse than the Bolt. The Bolt, they made them park outside of the garage and only charged 80%. Well, you buy this wonderful new car and you can't drive it.
No, and they're offering to even buy them back from the owners, right?
Right. Or give them a $5,000 fuel credit. And it's stupid. And this is a segment of what James learned, because it's interesting. I learned something. I always like to share with the listeners when I learn something called profit parity. So EVs may be more expensive than internal combustion engines to buy, but they also make more money for car makers. And Audi says that moment is now. So we talk about sales, EV parity, like it'll have the same price tag on it as like a comparable vehicle. And they say that it's starting to happen now with the premium vehicles. Well, Audi is saying that the point where they make profit is at parity now with what they make profit on other vehicles like gas vehicles.
Interesting.
So that means, you know what that means, right? It means they're going to make them. It means that the onus is now on them. They want to make money so that they start taking the reins of the EV revolution. And that is a fantastic thing.
Although still less to be made in terms of maintenance and, for the dealers, like, oil changes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Gosh, I hate oil changes. There's a small town, Saskatchewan person who posted on our local Facebook EV group page, a Melville Tesla owner, and he said he bought a Tesla and he was showing it off, as people do on these pages, but he was in Melville, which is a small town, and I happen to have
little town, yep.
Happen to have some redneck relatives there. So I asked him how the townspeople are reacting to his electric car, and I had to laugh at his response. He says it's like a weird science experiment that's driving around, if you ask them. Also, I just got a YouTube comment that I saw from a couple of episodes ago, and it says, this is from John, can you upload just one version of the podcast? Because we have a live version. Says I would prefer the ones with the video. It's kind of annoying to support when you watch and listen to one version, and you have the live version with the people in it come in the middle of the night. I don't know. There's not anything I can do about that except for starting a separate channel for the audio, which some people recommend you do. I wish you could subscribe to a playlist because it's on different playlists, but do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with just putting the one version on there, like the video version. That's when people tune into YouTube, they prefer to have visuals with it. So can't we just do that?
Well, we do have a fairly good audience of people who just like the audio.
Right.
Maybe it's because that comes first. I don't know. But when you listen to Libsyn and other people who are on the, the server side, they say that there is a good demand for there's people who listen to audio only podcasts on YouTube. And that is a good way to get people in because it's a different way of, expanding your audience and people finding you, because it's hard for people to find podcasts in this day and age. This is from Bloomberg on Tuesday. The UK government is preparing for a winter energy crisis that includes a reasonable worst case scenario. This is because, they have less energy because France isn't exporting. They've only got half their nuclear. That's one reason. There's some other countries that may not be able to export electricity into the UK. And so, Bloomberg has an exclusive on this. And they think that they're planning for a bad case scenario where for 4 days in January, the peak demand could surpass their capacity. And this is what we talked about for a summer heat wave, which we haven't really gotten here in our province, where, they might have been planning for that as well.
Yeah.
But this would include organized blackouts for industry and even households. So you could have rolling blackouts in the UK this winter if there's a cold snap.
Yeah. And of course, the dispute continues with Germany and Russia. There's still not the full amount of gas flowing to Germany. Not a huge amount of developments there. It's still, gas is going through from Russia to Germany, but at a reduced amount. And there's still a bit of a standoff, a stalemate over, how to resolve that.
This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Brian, the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, and it is a consequential, bloody miraculous piece of legislation that we did not see coming. In fact, there was this computer chip manufacturing in the U.S. bill that Republicans were going to support, but only if Manchin didn't support the Climate Act. So he said, there's no way in hell, this is mid-July, that I'm ever going to support the Climate Act. So they passed the Chip Act. And Manchin did it about face, which shocked the hell out of absolutely everyone, including the EV analysts and energy analysts that we talked to on the last episode at Bloomberg New Energy Finance in New York. They were flabbergasted as well. Anyway, Brian, this does a lot for EVs. It does a lot. It's a bill that does a lot of different things, of course. It's supposed to reduce inflation. We'll get to that in a moment. But it also does a lot for the climate. It's supposed to up to 40% reduction of emissions by 2030 in the United States, which is groundbreaking.
No, it's remarkable. And of course, we talked about this extensively, a year ago or something, when it was called the Build Back Better bill. And we talked about it then because it seemed like it was likely to pass. And, I felt like a chump for having, spent all this energy thinking about it and talking about it. And then to have it just die like that was very disappointing. And complete surprise to have it suddenly brought back under a different name.
It felt like Joe Manchin was stringing people along and saying, yoink, no, I'm not going to ever do anything, but trying to appease me. Now, there is some stuff in here for fossil fuels, including a pipeline in his own state, of course.
Yeah.
But the consensus is that that's minor. The CO2 that adds is minor compared to the biggest spending bill in U.S. history on climate, and it's a huge thing. So, yes, the $7,500 tax credits that people get for EVs have been used up by Tesla, GM, and Toyota, believe it or not, for their plug-in electric hybrids. So, there was a 200,000 vehicle cap on that, but now that's all gone. They'll be able to do it again as long as the criteria is met by the automakers, which is sourcing a lot of that stuff locally or within their free trade zone. So there's also a used EV credit of $4,000, both at a point of sale if you buy it from a dealer, if you don't have to wait for the tax time. I think both these things can be supposedly done at a dealer. plug-in electric vehicles qualify with batteries of at least 7 kilowatts, which is not much.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's, a battery that small really doesn't cost very much. So it's a rather large subsidy for,
It's a few e-bike batteries.
for not doing much. So that's one of the more unfortunate things, that this will maybe prolong the life of the plug-in hybrid, which we, need to move away from.
And from inside EVs, this pushes U.S. automakers to become more independent from China. In order for cars to qualify, they have to source materials to North America, or a country that has a free trade agreement with North America, or with the U.S. rather. The percentage of these materials increases over the years of this. This goes to 2032, which I brought up with the Bloomberg people is a bit absurd. I mean, if we hit price parity for all vehicle segments, say in 2028, and they go down from there, and then you're giving a rebate in 2032, might be a little bit weird.
Yeah, although a great response on that, which is, if this is largely about, carbon emissions reduction, then, why not keep it out to 2032?
And $840 to offset the cost of a heat pump, clothes dryer, or electric stove. So yeah, you can. That's pretty good. I wish I had that. I'd probably go get one.
Yeah, those are both. That'd be great.
$8,000 for a heat pump for your house. $4,000 for an electrical panel upgrade, which is interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people need electrical panel upgrades like you do.
No. And as I said, mine cost about 6,000 Canadian, which is, not much more than that 4,000 US figure. That's great.
$2,500 for improving electrical wiring in your home if you need it. So, and say that might qualify for what you did, because you had to change your connection to the grid.
Yeah, I think that might have covered the whole thing. And I said at the time, like, this is something like everybody in my neighborhood is going to have to do this in the next 10 years or so. Many, many neighborhoods are just 100 amp service, and that's just not going to fly in the era where we electrify everything.
So these are the kinds of things that I haven't heard of before, the kind of incentives. So it's interesting to see how it plays out. One thing about this is that they're trying to bring solar manufacturing to the United States, and almost all the chips for solar panels are made in China. They're made cheaply there. The United States seems like the last country that can compete with manufacturing on an economic scale. So we'll see how that works. But the Bloomberg people did point out that wind turbines, which will also be manufactured, they're big, so it's good to make them local. Even the blades have to be, I don't know about the turbine, the actual generator itself, but we'll see about that.
Anything big and heavy. So this was originally called Build Back Better. It's now called the Inflation Reduction Act, which is, I guess, the flavor of the moment. But the question is, and it's really, a climate and infrastructure spending bill, and not maybe that it matters, but, is this actually an inflation reduction bill?
I've read several pieces on this saying that it is. I've read a couple that's saying that it's not. I've read a lot more saying that it is. I think there's still a lot of analysis going on here, but they've made some arguments that are above my pay grade. Like just clean energy in general is a reduction of inflation, because electricity, for example, costs less. So that reduces things, right?
Yeah, and the way that fossil fuel prices have spiked recently because of the war in Ukraine, that's a large part of the inflation that we've been having. So yeah, in theory, if you cut demand for oil and gas, that should bring down inflation, because it'll bring down prices. If all this goes through, 40% reduction in emissions in the US by 2030, like, that's a remarkable amount. And yeah, that should hopefully, ease up demand for oil and bring the price down.
Okay. Well, UPS has given some money, right?
USPS, the US Postal Service.
Right, not US, different organization.
And this is a story we've talked about before. Many, many people upset with the U.S. Postal Service for not going fully electric in the new fleet of delivery vans that they've been planning. And they've kind of increased the amount a couple of times, but they were still planning to buy lots and lots of gas-powered vehicles for the U.S. Postal Service. But this new bill includes $3 billion for the U.S. Postal Service to buy electric trucks specifically, which was kind of the figure that they asked for. It's like, oh, we need $3 billion to do that. And guess what? They've got it. And hopefully now this means all electric for the U.S. Postal Service.
So again, we talk about this extensively with people who are about as expert as you can get from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. One is Tom Rollins-Reese, who is the head of research for North America, and the other is an EV analyst, Corey Cantor. This is in episode 126, which we dropped yesterday. So it's just behind this episode. It's a good interview, a good information from people who absolutely know their stuff. And we will cover that act more extensively there with those experts. And I encourage you to listen to it. Also encourage you to give us feedback if you're interested in interviews. We did one before, right? We did one with Yuri
Tarashin from the Straight Pipes.
And we got some good feedback on that. People seem to enjoy listening to that. So yeah, if you, we could probably do that from time to time, and in addition to the show that we normally do.
Okay, so there has been a massive fire in Cuba at an oil storage facility, and this is from a lightning strike. It's not something you hear about necessarily all that often, but oil is flammable and therefore susceptible to things like lightning strikes. So this is turning out to be a huge problem. There's now a fourth tank has caught on fire at this facility. So it's a massive fire burning out of control. And speaking of like brownouts and blackouts and electricity system, Cuba was already predicting that they were going to have electricity problems this summer, and they'd actually already have planned blackouts for Havana, because and this is potentially going to be worse because of this, because this oil storage facility was supplying oil to be burned at thermoelectric plants for some of the electricity system. So Cuba already in trouble in terms of their electricity system. Now it's going to be worse because of this fire, which is still not out yet. But the other thing that sort of brought to mind to me was just that we're at this inflection point where we're, switching to clean energy, but we're also at this inflection point where just a lot of the infrastructure, I think, is really aging, like all over the world. Certainly in North America here, like, our electrical grid in our province, like, they put up a zillion power poles, 50, 60 years ago in the province. And guess what? 50, 60 years later, they're all kind of starting to fall over. And I think a lot of the grid structure in North America and really all over the world is kind of on its last legs. And maybe the clean energy revolution is not going to come fast enough because these are sort of coinciding issues. But, it sounds like Cuba was in a bit of a problem already. Aging infrastructure was kind of bringing things down. And then, boom, a lightning strike. And now they could be in trouble.
Yeah. And, people will go around saying that clean energy will bring down the grid and we'll have rolling blackouts. No. Actually, I keep seeing information and studies saying that, the clean energy will eventually make the grid more stable, that it'll be more reliable, that those batteries, then people's EVs working in a two-way function, everything's going to be more stable once we finally get it figured out.
We're just in this transition period where anytime there's a grid problem, the pro-clean energy people are going to say, hey, it's the fossil fuels that are the problem. And the anti-clean energy people are going to say, no, it's the windmills that are the problem.
Windmills. They're not windmills.
Well, that's what they'll say.
Yeah, that's what they'll say, but they'll be wrong.
Idiots.
Brian, there's one crucial bit of information from my vacation that I overlooked that this reminded me of.
Yeah.
You might say, James, what did a Cuban oil refinery or oil storage fire remind you of for your vacation? Yeah. Good question, if you had asked it. I was minding my own business, driving to your cottage in beautiful Kenosee, and we went through the town of Kipling.
Yeah.
As one does. And we slowed down because there was a lower speed limit in town. And there's a few bunched up cars in front of us. So we're, going slow. And then suddenly I see this river of fluid flowing across the road from left to right along gravitational lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay, it's this clear liquid and it's just flowing like a river. Like, what is this, a water main break or something? And just as I'm about to drive over it, with my hot exhaust, I look over and there's these two guys in a pickup truck trying to get this tank desperately back onto the back of a truck.
Oh, no.
And it smelled horrible. And I'm fairly certain that it was diesel. And, you know, a little bit, I didn't go too slow. So the guy kind of gave me a dirty look, but what the hell was I to know? And this is this instant frame capture second moment of time that burns in your mind. And that's what I saw. And so I think some Yahoo was taking some diesel, a big tank of it, back to the farm or whatever. That probably happens. I've seen other people doing that during this trip. And it fell off and spilled everywhere. Like probably $2,000 worth of it, I would guess, at least. But the thing is, you know, if you're driving over and it splatters up on your exhaust, your hot exhaust, which I had an SUV, gas-powered SUV, which, by the way, $2 a gallon, or $2 a liter, rather. And it went down through the trip. The gas prices were falling fast, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could have set me on fire and set him on fire. And it was just a dangerous, stupid, what the hell, where did this come? But my car smelled like that the whole trip.
Oh, no.
On the outside. Like if you walked near it to get a bike or something off the rack, then it was like, it still smells. And it's like this horrible smell. And yeah. So, and I kept checking Twitter to see if anybody was tweeting about it or if there was a subsequent explosion or, you know, but this is an environmental catastrophe. What were they going to do? Just run away and just leave it into the groundwater, the well water, and it was going to come back in the well water of this town or something? I mean, I don't know where they get their water, but it could be. Yeah,
so that's the James almost died story.
There's always some way of me almost dying on a trip to your cottage. But
I often say, like, you know, fossil fuels are often the most unpleasant thing about the cottage, because even though you're supposed to be commuting in nature, everybody's got these giant SUVs and jet skis and everything. And then your car has to drive through a bunch of diesel and then stink the whole time.
Or maybe burn down. And I have to breathe it too. So, yeah. And there, you know, it was a long weekend. It was the August long weekend in Canada, and I've been there on the July long weekend, and that's where people party, and there's thousands and thousands of boats out in the river, or the lake rather, and people blasting music. So yeah, I look forward to an electrified future. I told my son that because of course he wants to buy a cottage now, thanks to you. So I don't know where he's going to get one, but they're hard to come by now. Yeah. And I said, well, maybe it'll be quieter when you have one because of electrification. Forbes magazine says electric car batteries are lasting longer than predicted. And, you know, the automakers were ramping up for recycling programs, but they've all been delayed because, you know, I'm an example of that because I have one of the earliest EVs that have been mass produced, and it's going strong, and it's also a terrible battery. So there's only better batteries than what I have. And yeah, and even if, you know, I crashed it and the modules could be used for various things, they still have a value before they're recycled. So this is almost all of the electric car batteries, according to Nissan executive Nick Thomas, are still in the cars. And people, you know, this is one of the naysayers things that people say all the time. And he says, we've been selling them for 12 years. So, well, I'm just going to leave it at that. But the deal is the EV batteries will outlast the car. People don't get that. Even EV buyers don't get that.
Yeah.
But that's the deal. And there's lots of reasons why.
And there's usually a second step. As you say, the car gets totaled. You can still take the cells out. You can put them in home storage. You know, there's a second use before you get to the eventual, which is to crack it all open and take the minerals out. And recycle them. So
my car has lost some of its range over the 10 years that it has existed. But what some companies do is they'll buy a pack at a wrecker, you know, say from another Nissan Leaf. They'll take the best modules out of there and replace the worst ones in your car. And then they'll send the rest as recycling. But what people don't realize is electric cars have sophisticated battery management systems that guard the long-term health of the batteries. And most manufacturers offer, you know, warranties of 8 years or 100,000 miles even. And there's, an industry expectation that EVs will last longer than that. So they should outlive the cars. Yeah, and they're definitely going to get better. Like they're only going to get better. Like Tesla's talking about million-mile batteries and 1.5 million-mile batteries. So we'll see what happens in the next 10 years.
Yeah, you can expect a bit of degradation, but your battery should last for the life of the car. I mean, right now, people trade in their cars after 3 years, 5 years. Your EV should be able to go a lot longer than that. Okay, a story here from Drive Tesla Canada. This is a couple of weeks old, but I thought it was important just because we talk about the Japanese car manufacturers quite a bit, and that is that BYD is planning to enter the Japanese car market. This just struck me as a really, really big deal. I'm a person who grew up on Japanese cars in the 70s and 80s. That's all I was interested in owning was Japanese cars. And now here we are. BYD from China is, going into the belly of the beast, as it were.
This is a very interesting development, Mr. Stockton, isn't it? This is very symbolic in many ways, isn't it?
That's what I thought. I mean, they're going into, Toyota, Nissan's backyard, and they're just going to scoop up market share.
That says so much. The Japanese automakers, I see thriving with their plug-in electric hybrids, but people really don't want them anymore. There's some places that do, but people generally want the full meal deal. They want a battery electric vehicle. And you see that with many of the sales reports in most places, in a lot of places.
What do you think?
Brian, it's time for What Do You Think? And let's breathe through this quickly, please. This is where I ask you, what do you think of things that I'm not sure what to think about? So Tesla is not going to only add 8 new factories, which is entirely possible by 2030, but increase average volume production capacity from the 450,000 averaged across their 4 current factories to 1.66 million per factory to reach 20 million per year. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is entirely possible. They've been saying for a while that 20 million vehicles per year is their goal, and this would be, way more than anybody's currently doing. The Tesla factory in Shanghai is at a run rate approaching 1 million vehicles a year, just at that one factory. They haven't done that for a full year, but their current run rate, and they just had some more upgrades, and they've opened a new line. So just in the past month, after their shutdown, they had a shutdown for COVID, and then they had a shutdown to upgrade the factory. And, it's only been a few weeks, but they appear to be producing vehicles at a rate so far unheard of for Tesla. So they're definitely on track for 1 million vehicles out of the Beijing factory. And no reason to think that they can't replicate that at, they're looking for maybe a dozen factories to make 20 million a year, to take the crown of the world's biggest automaker away from Toyota, which they're already kind of on the verge of doing with the Toyota Corolla. It seems a bit weird because they really don't have that many models. They've got the Model Y and the Model 3. Those are the mass market ones. But the Cybertruck is coming. The Tesla Semi is coming. They've started teasing like some kind of a van or a people mover vehicle. So there'll be probably some more announcements of different form factors for the car. So, I mean, I think that's what the naysayers are mostly questioning is like, well, how are they going to make 20 million? Because, they've only got a couple of models and they'll keep it small. They don't need that many models. But yeah, seems entirely possible. And there should be a new factory announcement soon, possibly Canada, which is the next thing on your list here for things to ask me about. We don't really know the details other than Tesla had to release that they've been lobbying I believe it was the Ontario government in Canada, the province of Ontario. Whenever you do lobbying of the government, it has to be announced. So they did that. So it could be a factory in Canada, but they could also just be lobbying for, battery materials or mining or something like that too. But yeah, I think potentially good news for Canada.
Musk has teased it too. He's teased Canada. So we'll have to see. I wouldn't be surprised, because the government is pulling out all the stops to get EV manufacturing here, which is good because it is the future and we do need jobs. Yeah,
I think our government would be on board with that. And there is a history of automotive manufacturing, particularly in Ontario, but also Quebec. We make a lot of cars here. A lot of the, American branded cars are made here in Canada. So, there is the kind of base of knowledge to start that here for sure.
So the California Public Utilities Commission made California the first state in the nation to allow EV owners to measure an EV's energy use independently from the owner's main utility meter through submetering. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, we often talk about, the coming smart grid. It hadn't occurred to me that this could be one of the uses of a smart grid, but there could be some useful parts of, monitoring your grid use separately. EVs could then be kind of modeled out in your electricity bill and be somehow treated, differently.
So that would be
maybe that's where they could put, like a gasoline tax. Everyone's wondering, well, if we're not going to be getting our gasoline taxes anymore.
It depends on how they want to treat it.
That would be the sort of bad news, is maybe that's where they'd put the gasoline tax, as it were, onto your EV bill. Or, it depends on how they want to treat it.
As temperatures rise, shifts in travel patterns are likely to become more common in Europe, with researchers describing as a hotspot for severe summer heat. So many travelers are setting their sights on Scandinavia or switching to the spring and fall for traveling. As a person,
this is interesting. We talked about my 1994 trip to Europe, which turned out at the time to be the hottest summer on record.
What do you think of this?
For Europe, it's been surpassed since then. But it's not very pleasant to, traveling somewhere when it's blistering hot like that. So absolutely, this makes a lot of sense. We're all going to maybe have to start thinking differently about, when and where we travel. And speaking of tropical vacations, Hawaii has received their final shipment of coal.
All new at 6, 1 month to go until Hawaii no longer burns coal for electricity. Tonight, a closer look at the final shipment from Indonesia arriving in Kalaeloa.
A huge milestone, as experts believe we have enough renewable resources coming online to meet Oahu's energy needs.
There's no use for coal for electricity anywhere in the world. The coal.
So I just wanted to include this because, especially with that audio clip, it just seemed like a really great, good news story. So the state of Hawaii has been using coal as part of their electricity generation. But as they start to move to more renewable sources, they have literally received their last shipment of coal that's going to be burned for electricity. And this will take a while to get through. And I suppose there's a danger in the next year or two of maybe, we made a mistake. We did this too quickly. And, maybe we'll need more coal. But I don't think so. And as we know, renewables are fairly quick to put up. And as long as they've made all their plans correctly for the grid needs, the last shipment of coal. This is just, fantastic good news.
That's amazing.
As an island state,
of coal ever to come in.
You also want to have kind of energy autonomy.
Cool.
There should be no reason to ship anything into Hawaii to burn, to make electricity. You've got all the sunshine and wind that you need to be independent. And, you don't have to worry about your shipment of coal getting wiped out by a tsunami or something. All
right, Brian, the show would normally be over by now, but no. Due to vacation, we've got so much to give, so much to get out. We have a mail item here. Reminder, though, coming up is the lightning round. We get through the week's headlines briefly, but let's dip into the mailbag from the Mogget. He wrote us a couple weeks ago. He says, on your show yesterday, there was a discussion about wastefulness and efficiency. Now, normally your team, that's you and me, Brian, we're the team, is super on point, but I have to disagree this time. The old wave of environmentalism was the miserly moral kind. The old wave of environmentalism was the miserly moral kind. I must suffer to save the world. People are advised to adjust their thermostats, drive small cars or slow cars, eat less. But the new technology environmentalism is a focus on solving problems completely rather than doing slightly less bad things through efficiency. So when people see this new view as a threat to their lifestyle, they throw up barriers. Climate denialism isn't just about science. People just basically don't want to change. But he says that, this is something we talked about for the future: cheap power, free power, cheap heat for your home. This is all about the story about leaving the doors open at shops in France with the air conditioning running, and you don't like wastefulness. But yeah, we're not there yet, are we?
No, that's the only point. Yeah, this is an absolutely valid point. I think that is definitely our future. But for the time being, especially in this era when, Europe facing energy shortages, they're having problems with some of their nuclear, there just isn't the kind of excess power on the grid that there used to be. So particularly for the next couple of years in this transition, they still have to close the doors on those shops in France. And there was another story, I think, from Italy, where they're regulating the amount of electricity. Like you're not supposed to set your AC lower than 27 Celsius or something like that in Italy. So, we're still in a power crunch. We still need to conserve. But, absolutely, this is our future. This is going to be an abundant future, particularly what Tony Seba talks about from Rethink X. He thinks it's going to be a super abundant future with essentially free electricity is kind of where we're headed. We're just not there yet.
He makes a good point. And I take that point, because it is hard to get your head wrapped around that. But that is our future, and it will affect the way I talk about things a little bit as we move forward. It's just hard for people to wrap their head around it unless you're on the forefront of this, and that's the thing. But yeah, I don't think my neighbors would understand anything I was talking about if I said we're going to get free electricity in the future, that, you'll be able to leave your door open in winter and just, let the fresh air in if you wanted to, because
don't tell your neighbors, they'll call social services on you.
They probably will. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for leaving us that email. Contact us at Clean Energy Show. Write us right now, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter. You can get updates to our show schedule there if we change our show schedule around at all, or have special episodes like we did this week. TikTok, we're there. Clean Energy Pod is the handle for TikTok and Twitter. Even if you're not a Twitter user or a casual Twitter user, I recommend you follow us. They get the latest. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for Talking Heads, video of us doing the show unedited. So leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/clean energy. The Clean Energy Show lightning round. Oh, it's time for the lightning round. Okay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago it was time for the lightning round, but here we go, Brian. Hang on, buckle in. This is a fast look at the rest of the week's headlines in clean energy that I wanted to talk about. Rainwater everywhere on Earth is unsafe to drink due to forever chemicals.
That was the name of my alt rock band in the 80s. Forever Chemicals.
There was a movie. Damn it, I forget the name of it. I just watched a movie on the Forever Chemicals lawsuit. This is like frying pans and nonstick and how they stick around, and they are making people sick in someplace in the southern states. So University of Stockholm study finds that this is true for drinking water even in the Antarctic. These per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, are a large family of human chemicals that don't occur in nature. They don't go away. And yes, don't drink the rainwater, people. Tip from the Clean Energy Show. A new study by Stanford University says that prices would immediately drop, and all of upfront costs for switching to 100% renewable energy would be paid back in 6 years. So if we suddenly, right now, switch to 100% renewable energy, it would pay back itself in 6 years.
Yeah, and this is the other thing that your neighbors probably wouldn't understand, and they would call you crazy if you said that. Yep. But it is absolutely cheaper to just ditch this stuff as soon as possible. Go clean energy. That's the way to go.
So up in Nordic space, the world's first subsidy-free offshore wind farm has started to produce power. Just thought I'd mention that because it's kind of a milestone to have subsidy-free wind farm start. They didn't even ask for subsidies when they put in the bid. That's cool. So the failure in French nuclear is increasing electricity prices all over Europe, not just in France. France already had more nuclear than they could use themselves in the past and was a net exporter during nighttime and low French demands. Now France has a huge electricity import further increasing. The prices have gone out of control in France. France is an interesting case study right now.
Yeah, and the UK is also in a bit of a power crunch, and it's partly because they've often relied on France to send them some excess power. So, lots of potential shortages and brownouts and blackouts coming in the UK and other places.
Brian, it's time for a surprise new feature, the Clean Energy Show Fast Fact. That's right. I'm going to randomly insert fast facts into the show now from time to time. Electric vehicles require fewer workers to assemble than gas or diesel vehicles, according to the New York Times.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. And just one more reason.
Is it maybe just the evolution of these things? I mean, car factories are just getting more automated over the years.
No, if you look at a combustion vehicle, all the hoses and the clamps and the welding and the exhaust pipes, I can see how it would be. Here's another one.
Yeah.
175 of the 180 nuclear power projects examined in a study found the final costs exceeded the initial budget by an average of 117%. Hope you were sitting down for that. And took an average of 64% longer than projected. So that is a study that has proven that nuclear never comes in on time or on budget. Oh, why don't we have another fast fact? The land requirement for the world to go carbon neutral is less than that of the current energy infrastructure.
That's remarkable. So putting up...
People say, oh, where are you going to put... My son even said this. Where are you going to put all the solar panels? How about on the oil wells lands, on the refinery land, on the pipeline land? Come on.
Yeah,
people.
so we don't often talk about that, but all of this, or, that oil storage facility in Cuba that we were talking about earlier, it's not just a fire hazard, but it's a massive, massive place that, could easily use that land for solar. And apparently you wouldn't even need that much.
From our friends at Bloomberg, I think we can say that now, France's EDF utility is lowering its nuclear power output because the temperature of the river it relies on for cooling is getting too hot in a heat wave this summer driven by climate change. Everything fits together, Brian. Everything we talk about, it all fits together like a perfect puzzle. And
it's all connected.
Yeah, even nuclear. I mean, this is after Reuters reported that the Rhine in Germany, its main shipping artery, was getting too shallow to transport coal to power stations. It's almost like God is saying, hurry the hell up. Nature is acting back.
Yeah.
And there's these loops of things that are happening.
No, and the Hoover Dam in the U.S., which I believe it's Lake Mead, which is backed up by the Hoover Dam, is the water level has been dropping for years. They may not be able to generate electricity there at some point in the future.
This is from EcoWatch, hot off the press. A new study has found that as climate warming increases overnight temperatures, these hotter nights could increase mortality risks in heat waves by as much as 60%. Because remember, we were talking about this a couple of shows ago. It's not just about the temperature during the day, it's the temperature at night, which is why we have heat warnings based on nighttime temperatures in Canada, because you don't get any relief from it. Your house doesn't cool down.
And that was the case last summer here where we live. It just was not cooling down at night. So it was definitely the hottest summer that I've had living in this house. This year, fortunately, it's kind of acting more like the old days, and it has been cooling down at night. We've had maybe one night this summer where it was difficult to sleep. But it's been cooling down at night, and it's been an absolute dream. It's been okay not to have air conditioning this summer.
And finally this week on this fat, overstuffed show from the journal Nature, rapid battery cost declines accelerate the prospects of an all-electric inter-regional container shipping routes. So as battery prices of $100 US per kilowatt hour, as they approach that, the electrification of inter-regional trade routes of less than 1,500 kilometers, which if you ask me is still pretty significant, is economical with a battery ship with a minimal impact to the ship carrying capacity. So that is to say, it's not displacing much of the ship's capacity to stuff it with batteries because of the costs, and including the environmental costs. That's not including the environmental, but if you include them, the economical range increases to 5,000 kilometers. And if batteries achieve a $50 per kilowatt hour price point, which we expect them to sometime next decade, maybe earlier than later, the economical range nearly doubles to up to 10,000 or 3,000 without the environmental impacts. So that means that, shipping is 14% of pollution in the States of US is coming from shipping. So yeah, it's not insignificant to electrify some of that. And that's something we also haven't heard about before. So that's a positive thing to end the show on, Brian.
Nice.
That's our time for this week. If you're new to the show, remember to subscribe on your podcast app to get new episodes delivered weekly. And we are always here every week, Brian, with the latest news and discussion thereof. So we'll see you next week.
See you next week.